The Cape Flats area on the outskirts of Cape Town, South Africa, is a harsh world where gangs rule and poverty is a daily reality. At just 17 years old, Cameron Wilson became a nightmare that would haunt the entire community as a serial killer. He seemed untouchable, protected by his father's prison gang connections, and bold enough to murder in broad daylight. This is the chilling story of South Africa's youngest serial killer and how a terrified community finally found the courage to stop him. October 2014 marked Cameron Wilson's first known attack. 22-year-old Alfonso Van Rooyen was walking through a winding street in Valhalla Park, heading to visit his grandmother. Though the neighborhood could be dangerous, it was a path Alfonso took nearly every day without incident. But on that day, residents peered out their windows at the sound of shouting. They witnessed Cameron catch up to Alfonso, grab him by the shoulder, and without hesitation, plunge a knife deep into his chest. Alfonso was left bleeding on the sidewalk, becoming Cameron's first known victim. Despite multiple witnesses, most were too afraid to come forward. This wasn't just because of Cameron, but because his father was a prominent member of the 28th Prison Gang, one of South Africa's most notorious criminal organizations. The fear of retaliation kept people silent, and those who did speak up soon learned why. Before we continue this story, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a like. Just 3 days after Alfonso's murder, that fear proved justified. Toyher Stauber, a well-respected shopkeeper who ran a store from his home, recognized Cameron as Alfonso's killer when he entered his shop. When Toyher asked Cameron to leave, he couldn't have known it would be the last decision he'd ever make. Hours later, neighbors rushed to inform Stauber's wife that her husband had been shot dead just down the road. Witnesses saw Cameron pull the trigger, but once again, terror kept them silent. No one dared provide a statement to the police. The message was clear: speak up and you die. With no witnesses willing to testify and his father's gang connections protecting him, Cameron Wilson was learning that he could kill with impunity. For the residents of the Cape Flats, the worst was yet to come. In just 2 years, Cameron would prove himself to be one of South Africa's most ruthless killers, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake that would shock even the most hardened detectives. By December 2014, Cameron's violence escalated. On Christmas Day, he murdered 20-year-old Ernest Erasmus in a chilling attack. Ernest and his girlfriend were retracing their steps near a tavern in Hines Park when Cameron appeared on his bicycle. When Ernest couldn't give him money, Cameron pulled out a screwdriver and plunged it into Ernest's neck, leaving him to bleed out on the sidewalk while he pedaled away. April 2015 brought 2 more attacks. First was Cody Fander, who was walking with a friend when Cameron approached them. Cameron demanded a look inside Cody's backpack. When Cody refused, Cameron became angry, pulled out a knife, and stabbed Cody in the chest before fleeing the scene. Despite being critically injured, Cody survived the attack. Later that same month, 17-year-old Donnie Davids became another one of Cameron's victims. Donnie had been visiting a friend and was walking home alone across an open field when she bumped into Cameron's cousin. She knew him from the area, so she felt safe chatting as they walked. That changed when Cameron suddenly appeared and aggressively grabbed her. Cameron dragged the terrified girl to a more isolated area. There, he forced his cousin to start kicking Donnie before ordering him away. Donnie begged and pleaded with Cameron to let her go, demanding to know why he was doing this. Cameron ignored her cries and proceeded to rape her. When he finished, Donnie tried to run, but Cameron caught up and stabbed her viciously in the back of the neck before leaving her for dead. Donnie survived and was rushed to the hospital. Despite being able to identify Cameron as her attacker, he remained free. The lack of cooperation from witnesses and the fear of retaliation from Cameron's father's gang meant police struggled to build a case. At the end of April 2015, Cameron Wilson committed one of his most brutal crimes when he attacked 16-year-old Stacey Lee Mohale and her friend Abigail Platjes. The girls were walking home from school when Cameron and his 13-year-old accomplice approached them. What seemed harmless at first turned sinister when Cameron pulled out a gun and forced them to a secluded area. Once isolated, Cameron raped both girls while his young accomplice stood guard. After the assaults, Cameron handed his accomplice a knife and ordered him to stab both girls. Then they placed gasoline-filled tires around the girls' necks and set them on fire, a horrific practice known as necklacing. Stacey Lee suffered an agonizing death. The post-mortem revealed multiple stab wounds and severe burns across her body. Somehow, despite her injuries, Abigail survived, Despite the community's fear of Cameron Wilson, Abigail showed exceptional bravery. She positively identified both Cameron and his accomplice, leading to Cameron's arrest. But in a shocking turn of events, Cameron was released on bail shortly after his arrest. Throughout 2016, Cameron's violent spree continued. Reports of attacks flooded local police stations. He attacked a 22-year-old woman after she refused to give him her lighter, beating her unconscious. Another woman was left with skull fractures after he attacked her with a hammer. A man was stabbed in the chest for refusing to hand over his watch during a robbery. Each attack grew more violent than the last. Cameron seemed to take pleasure in causing pain, showing complete disregard for human life. But in September 2016, he committed the crime that would finally lead to his downfall, the brutal murder of 18-year-old Lakita Moore. On September 10, 2016, Lakita Moore told her father she was going to a friend's birthday party. It was the last time he would see his daughter alive. The next morning, a woman walking her dog found Lakita's body in a field near 8th Avenue. She had been stabbed 98 times. When detectives interviewed Lakita's 16-year-old sister, Mercia, they learned that Lakita and Cameron had known each other for years. Cameron was the cousin of Mercia's boyfriend and often visited their home. In the weeks before her murder, Cameron had become obsessed with Lakita, bombarding her with threats when she refused to date him. On the night of her murder, Cameron showed up at the party uninvited. Witnesses saw him arguing with Lakita, grabbing her arm and yelling over the music. When her friends intervened, Cameron stormed out, shouting that Lakita belonged to him. Later that night, Cameron returned. Despite her sister's protests, Lakita left with him. He claimed they were just going to buy wine. It was the last time anyone saw her alive. But Cameron wasn't done. The very next day, police found the body of 20-year-old Xavier Bester in a nearby field. Xavier had been at the same party, and witnesses reported seeing him argue with Cameron outside. When police finally arrested Cameron on September 12, 2016, he showed no remorse. Instead, he smirked at officers. For each murder, he had a different story. He claimed he was home watching movies during Lakita's murder. When faced with witness accounts, he blamed Xavier. For Alfonso's murder, he said he was visiting a friend. For Stacy Lee's death, he tried to blame his 13-year-old accomplice. In June 2017, Judgment Day arrived. The courtroom was packed with victims' families as Cameron faced 15 charges, including 5 murders. As Judge Chantel Fortuyn read the verdicts, Cameron's response shocked everyone. He started clapping. The judge sentenced him to 4 life terms plus 71 years. But Cameron wasn't finished putting on a show. His final act was blowing a kiss to the devastated families in the gallery. Today, Cameron Wilson sits in prison, eligible for parole in 25 years. His case stands as a dark chapter in Cape Flats history, where fear and intimidation allowed a teenage killer to operate freely for years. But it also shows how the courage of survivors like Abigail and witnesses who finally came forward can bring even the most protected criminals to justice. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime stories like this. Remember, there's another video available on my channel. By the way, feel free to leave a positive comment or suggest any ideas to improve the channel.